Welcome to this episode of Athletic Training Chat. On this episode, we are on with Eli Kassab, which if you are on Twitter, you have most likely seen Eli's TikTok videos that have been popping up in some of the dance-offs that he's had. So highly entertaining. If you haven't checked those out, we recommend that you do because you are in for a show to say the least. But in this episode, Eli and I talk about athletic training burnout, how that can affect you and how you can use it not just as something to take a break, but also turn it into a positive, and you never know where that stuff's going to quite lead you. So really good episode, especially during this time. We talk about it in relation to using this time to kind of get back to what would seemingly maybe be a baseline to help kind of recalibrate and get going from there. Great episode, and we hope you enjoy. This episode of Athletic Training Chat. We are on with Eli Kassab, which I probably should have asked if that said that correctly.
You nailed it, actually. Well done, man.
Perfect. Awesome. I was thinking about that earlier and, of course, didn't ask. But anyway, we are, when this comes out in, I'm sure, just a few weeks, at the forefront of the coronavirus pandemic.
Yeah.
So we did not have this plan to do this week during this, but it ends up working out really well, especially on my end, very free. But we are going to be talking about athletic trainer burnout, which honestly I think is really interestingly timed with this because I know in my case we are basically shut down for 4 weeks in the collegiate setting. So a lot of time to kind of regather everything, which is going to be some sort of amazing, but not the case for everybody. But before we get there, Eli, I wanted to turn over and just get a little bit more background on you.
Yeah. So just, a little bit about me, just so people get to know me a little bit. I graduated, I've been certified since 2012. I graduated from undergrad at Weber State University. And then I did my GA ship at Northern Arizona University, did grad school out there. And then got in the middle of grad school, I got a summer internship with the Seattle Seahawks working football. And then after I finished and graduated, my GA ship, I went and worked with the Miami Dolphins on a 1-year position. And then I ended up staying for 2 years. They wanted me to come back. So I stayed a second year, did that for 2 years with the Dolphins. And then I took a position over at Oregon State briefly for about 6 weeks because the day before I left to take the Oregon State job, I got a call from the LA Rams, who were moving at the time, looking for another 1-year position that they haven't offered to me. And so I took a position down there, left Oregon State on good terms, and did a year with the Rams. And, at the end of the year, I was still kind of looking for a full-time position. Nothing had opened up yet. So I got a job over working at Stanford for football. I did that for a year, and then I quit. And then I started doing some PRN work with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu athletes, as well as started a mental health business and stopped the mental health business. And then now I'm still doing athletic training and kind of still transitioning into a couple of different things and experimenting with the other avenues to kind of try and sum it up. I try to make it short. Sorry.
Yeah, needless to say, you've done a little bit.
I've done a lot.
No kidding. Wow. Not even given that background, where to begin? AT burnout, I think it's something that comes up a lot, just our interactions back and forth. You mentioned that's something you find yourself talking to a lot of people about. I can see where potentially, knowing what I've been experienced in some of the roles that you've been in, it is very, very possible given those roles. But where are we at currently on that, do you think?
So with burnout in our profession, I think it's still, I think where we're at right now is just learning to understand it and what it is. I think for the people that I've talked to about it is, okay, is it a result from a number of hours worked? You know what I mean? Like, and that's, a lot of people are like, oh, you just decrease the hours that you're working and you won't burn out. Like, I don't think that's personally, I don't think that's true. I think the burnout part is when it starts mentally affecting your state of mind versus like, well, some people may really love what they're doing and they can do it for, 90 hours a week and be just fine. They might be physically exhausted, depending on the work, but they might enjoy it. So like mentally they're okay because they're doing what they love. So I think the first step is just kind of learning how to define it. Like, what is burnout? Is it just hours worked? Is it just pay? Like, for me, I think there's a more of a mental health component to it. And people can get burnt out working 40, 50 hours a week. So
Right.
I think a lot of people correlate it to hours worked. And I don't think that's necessarily accurate. I think for me, it's, again, looking at it from a mental health perspective and, are you happy? Are you feeling fulfilled? Are you feeling valued? Are you feeling, those types of things? And for me personally, like when I hit burnout for me was when my 2018 year when I was with Stanford. Before, I was still working football all those years, but I was doing okay. I was doing what I loved. I was super excited. My whole goal was to work in the NFL. And once I got there, we were working 90 to 100 hours a week and I was tired, but I enjoyed it. Like I loved it. And it was a lot of fun. There were, stressful periods, like training camp, super stressful because now you're pushing 115, 120 hours a week and you can get physically exhausted, but in the end, once you start the season, it gets a little bit more fun. So again, I think it just depends on your state of mind and kind of where you're at mental health wise with your job and, your personal values and goals. So I think just understanding that to answer your question is kind of
No,
where we're at.
absolutely. Um, that was actually kind of a question I had, and just now you bounced around a little bit. Maybe this ties a little bit into your mental health, company that you started, and maybe now have
Yeah.
downshifted a little bit. But do you see it, varying by the typical setting? Like, I have never been around professional football. I've been around Division I football. I haven't worked it as a certified, but know that I've been around it as a student. A lot of my experience has been in Division I track, which has its own unique kind of version of it, and that the season never ends. But now being at a Division III, there's busy times, but it's not always busy. And then I don't, I haven't actually done any work in a clinic or anything like that. So on a
Mhm.
regular basis, but any thoughts on that or in your conversations?
Yeah, for me, it's really interesting. I know the track and field work very well because during my GA ship, that's what I worked. I worked
I
track and field.
swear we ran into each other then because I was at Oklahoma State during the time.
Oh, we for sure then, because I know
Yeah.
for a fact we traveled up there for track or cross country.
Yep.
We're up there for some cross country
Yep.
meets. Dang, that's crazy.
Yep. When you said
Yeah.
Northern Arizona, I was like, man, I feel familiar. I think that's it.
Yeah. So I know it very well. I haven't, after I did, 2 years of that, and then yeah, like having a variety of experiences, at least for me, in my personal experiences, it was at least from the professional to the collegiate level, it was a lot more work at the collegiate level, at least for me in my specific situation at the time. Obviously that can change. Programs are always changing, always adding staff and changing things. But for me, just track and field, I know is a really, really long season. It never ends. As far as professional football, college football, for me, a lot of the guys when I was moving from NFL to college, they were telling me how much more work it was going to be. And, and it was true because because the athletes are there all year round. There's winter conditioning, there's spring football, there's summer conditioning, there's, it just never ends when you're in college. And like, I was almost as busy, if not busier in the off season in college than I was in season with football. So NFL wise, it in the off season, for the most part, you have a lot of downtime immediately out when the season ends, but then you have kind of periods where it gets busy, draft stuff, draft combine gets busy, OTAs get busy, rookie mini camp gets busy. But then you have like, again, the front end of like immediately after the season ends, you've got some downtime, a little bit depending on how far you go into the season. And then you've got essentially about 6 weeks of complete like downtime before training camp starts. Now you're not off for 6 weeks, but you'll rotate week vacations and stuff because you're still doing rehabs and things like that. But I have spoken to athletic trainers. I've got friends of mine that are in a clinical setting, industrial, military, a lot of different settings. And, and for me, I don't think it's all tied to football as far as the burnout thing. The most common ones that I've personally I've heard from is basically football and track and field, some basketball athletic trainers, but for the most part, it's kind of that track and field, and of course, a lot of football athletic trainers kind of hit that, and I've heard a lot of really good things being in a clinic, an industrial military setting. They obviously, those are a lot more manageable hours. So I think it's, less likely of getting burnt out. Not to say that you still can't, but it just becomes less likely in those settings, again, just from people that I know in those areas that I've talked to.
So specifically, mainly for the two of us, because this is where we spend most of our time in collegiate setting, maybe not so much the pros. What have you come across for like best practices on how to maybe control your hours or your job to some degree in order to avoid burnout?
Yeah. So that's something that gets a little bit tricky because a lot of it kind of depends on your support staff, your upper management, your supervisors. For me, it was there are some things you can control. Some things are out of your control, head coach or whatever is making the schedule and it is what it is. You can basically try and do your best within your own staff to try and manage it, but that's depends. Like if you've got a situation where you've got a team of 5 athletic trainers all working football, you guys can maybe afford to rotate some certain shifts or something like that, then great. But, it's not always the case. A lot of the times, people don't have, we're always shorthanded, in a lot of settings, but definitely in the collegiate setting. So I think as far as best practices for it to answer the question is really just learning how to kind of set some boundaries with the athletes and then the coaches. I think is really important, of course, again, personality dynamics come into play. What kind of head coaches are you working with, and are they open to your suggestions? Like, hey, coach, listen, it'd be more efficient if we, did taping and treatments like around this time and then have meetings, here and here and practice at this time. Can you have that conversation with your coach? And then if you can't, like, okay, well now how do you go about it? You're talking with your supervisor, how far up do you go up the chain before, you kind of have to just kind of maybe suck it up and then look at other settings. You know what I mean? Like there's only so much you can control, but at least making an effort to set boundaries, communicate with your coaches, communicate with your supervisor and say, hey, listen, like, do I need to, be here for, let's say there's a 4-hour window where I'm just twiddling my thumbs. Like, okay, well, can I shut down the training room? Like, can I go get lunch? Can I go get a workout in? Can I go do something? Some places will let you do that. Some places are very still old school and that you're in the training room and it's open, whether you're twiddling your thumbs or not, you're in there, you're open, you're available, because that's just the way it is, it has been. And I think trying to change that culture. So I really think it's a big piece is just, setting boundaries and communicating as best you can. Obviously it depends on who's on the receiving end of those things. But, focusing on the things that you can control and not spending time worrying about what you can't control. And if you are getting pushback and stuff like that, and you're in a toxic environment where nothing's working and you can't set boundaries, then, you either they change staff or you got to kind of up and leave, even though you may love your job. If you kind of hate the environment, and you're unhappy, that's, worst case scenario, you might have to kind of find somewhere else that's a little bit better suited and a little bit more open-minded into you setting those boundaries for yourself.
Yeah, I agree completely. You said a couple really interesting things there, and it's one we've been talking about. You said something very interesting, working with coaches, which I think is something that's continuing to come up. And I know it's something that I've really changed my viewpoint on in the last couple of years, working with, not for, and going from there. All that being said, specifically in the collegiate setting, the quote unquote medical model has been thrown around quite a bit, which I know can seemingly get interesting from time to time. I can't remember who I was talking to, but they were saying they were getting ready to, they had to put in their bid again because they had to be able to bid in order to provide the medical care to the team, the teams they always had, but because they are now out of athletics, that's how the process goes. Do you think that might have an impact on it? Or is some of, like you said, the old school places, coaches have all the power. This is what it is. And pretty much your choice is to either suck it up or, like you said, ultimately you always have the trump card. If you can leave, like that's got to be a personal decision no matter how much it sucks.
Yep. Yep. No, and so for me, I'm actually currently, I just started a couple months ago. I'm actually at I don't even know if I put this in my intro, but I'm at a Dixie State University right now in
Okay.
St. James, Utah. It's a Division II school going D1 here in a couple of months, and they're on the medical model. And so I've been at collegiate settings on both ends of the spectrum, with without it, with and without it. And so I've kind of gotten familiarized over the last few months, kind of working in that setting, and it's been nice. I'm sure there's pros and cons to it both, but I think yeah, I mean, learning to work with the coaches, and I think having that separation of being, working, basically being paid through the hospital but then working at the university, has kind of helped give us some security. For me, it's nice knowing that a head coach doesn't, because it does happen where in certain settings, if the head coach wants to bring in his own guy, like, you're gone no matter what. And
Unfortunate.
so yeah, it's unfortunate, but it happens a lot. Like, there's,
Right.
mostly in the professional setting, but it does happen. So, and I think, and I've seen from the coaching side of things too, that they're slowly becoming a little bit more open into working with us as an athletic trainers, and more open to working with other departments, because I think they're starting to realize, like, how much of an integrated system it needs to be in order to be successful. Some coaches, again, like athletic trainers, are still very old school in their thoughts and their mindset and their ways. And so, they may make decisions that are not necessarily best for either you or the strength conditioning staff or the nutrition staff, if you have one, all the different departments that are involved with the team that you're working for. But I am seeing that there are a lot more coaches that are becoming a little bit more open-minded and willing to work with the different departments,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to figure out a way to integrate everything together. And it's slow, because it's just been such a different culture over a very long time, that it's going to take some time to transition over. But I do see it changing a little bit, which is nice when you have some younger coaches, because they're a little bit more moldable sometimes, not always the case, but it's certainly something that, at least being on the medical model versus being in athletics, I think just from a job stability standpoint, that helps out quite a bit. And of course, if there are any complaints on the coach's side of things, they still can, go to the supervisor and stuff, and talk if they do have concerns about their athletic trainer. So you're not completely, exempt from getting, fired or replaced. But at least it gives you some sort of stability, and removal of any kind of, bias decisions you may or may not have, working with under the coaches.
Sure. Yeah, we've had a couple interviews at our school and talking with coaches in terms of new head coaches, and they kind of get through the process of AT, and they kind of come through. And in fact, that we've turned over so much, I've started kind of joking. I've heard this story. There was a head athletic trainer at a D3 in the area that would go into every new head coach's office on their first week and say, I'm so-and-so. I've been, since I've been here 30 years, I'm going to be here longer than you. Here's how we do things. So it was actually the AT going into these young coaches, because he knew they weren't going to be there for
Yep.
that long. But I don't have a specific answer to this, even if somebody would ask me the question. But your thoughts on how can ATs specifically in the collegiate setting, like, demonstrate their worth and their value when it's not necessarily just putting in more hours and time? Because I used to be that person to some degree, it's improved. Life changes are making it have to adjust even more at this point in my life. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing is to show, your worth and your value. I think first of all is to stand up for yourself and for the profession when needed. I mean, not letting coaches or players kind of run how you do things. And then I think the other thing is making sure that you're efficient with your time. I don't think it's necessarily, people are like, oh, I put in here's my worth. I put in this many hours. Well, like how many of those hours were work and how many of it were just sitting laying around? Like, you know what I mean? Like when you're talking about showing your worth, it's not like, at least for me, I don't think it's necessarily like the number of hours that you put in. I think it's the work. Like how productive are you being and how efficient are you being?
Sure.
And I think for me, as far as trying to get it to show into other people, I think that if you're being efficient and you're taking care of things and you're getting stuff done and you're communicating with your staff, with all the different departments, and you're saying, hey, you're showing how involved you are with the athletes. Like, a lot of the times, excuse me, there are some athletic trainers, for example, let's say we'll use injury reports for an example. I'm just trying to think of something that just forces people to kind of communicate a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Some people send them every day. Some people send them once a week. Some people might not send them at all and just verbally talk with the coaches. But I think it's important to maintain some sort of being able to track some sort of communication, whether it's through email or text messages, and making sure that everyone involved is up to date, because this can also show like, okay, hey, so-and-so, I'm getting an email from Eli about this athlete as far as, okay, here's what he's doing, here's where he's at, here's what we're doing here's his plan, like, here's how today went, here's his, he's seeing doc, here's his MRI, here, blah, 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 whatever the communication aspect is. So I think
Sure.
part of just showing value is showing the work that you're doing. Rehabs, for example, like communicating with staff or coaches about, specifically what's going on in rehab. And I know a lot of people are doing this already anyway, but I think it's a combination of just, showing people like what we're doing, make sure that they know about it. Cause again, if we're just doing everything, we're behind the scenes kind of people naturally, but as much as we can to try and show people like, kind of what we're doing. And that will kind of naturally sort of increase the value that we do have. And that, on top of that, in addition as well, is just building relationship with those around us. I think a lot of the times with athletic trainers, we work so many hours, we're like, man, I just, as soon as you got free time, you want to go home, and we kind of forget about relationship building.
Mm-hmm.
And this can be administrative staff, janitorial staff, nutrition staff, and just really building and nurturing relationships around you is also something I think can help kind of prove our value on our worth, because then by people getting to know you, they're a little bit more aware of what you do, versus where you're talking to like a nurse at the emergency room or your new team nutritionist, and they have no idea what athletic training is. Just maybe by touching base with them every once in a while, asking them questions or just saying hi, they get to know you a little bit and understand athletic training profession, and then understand a little bit that just kind of organically kind of lead to them knowing a little bit more about you and kind of what you do, which in turn is a reflection on the profession. Whether it's good or bad is kind of up to you, but
Right.
those are some things that I personally, I think can help.
Completely agree. Well said.
I appreciate it.
Thoughts on the phrase work-life balance?
Yes, I definitely have thoughts on that. I changed my viewpoints on this a little bit. I don't look at it as a work-life balance, me personally. Something that I've started doing, and the mindset I've adopted is work-life integration. To me, I realized how much of our lives that we actually work. And so for me, it was something that it's for how much work we put into it. it's very much integrated into our lives. And for me, at least, again, like I said, this is what's working for me. Trying to separate the two was really hard. And with, with the adjustment and the mindset for me, I'm better able to kind of navigate, well, what do I want profession and career wise that's going to be suitable for my lifestyle? And lifestyle changes. Eventually people, you get married if you want to, you have kids if you guys want, and, you get families and all that. Like, so stuff changes. And I think it's finding something that integrates with your lifestyle. I think trying to separate the two gets it gets tough, because, how do you separate two things that are basically your entire life? Work is, you're at work more than you are at home, depending on your job, but generally that's the case. And so with spending so much time in a work setting, you've got to find how it kind of integrates with your life. And, there's no number, hour attachment. It depends on how it fits in your lifestyle, both financially, hourly, the actual work, getting fulfillment, like, your mental health aspect of it. Like, how does it integrate with your life? Is it kind of hit all the things that are important to you, and are you happy? And if that's the case, then awesome. You're in a perfect spot. And, a lot of people aren't there yet, and it's totally fine. A lot of it's just kind of trial and error. So, I think, again, finding the type of job / career that integrates within your life the way that you want it, and that results in you being happy, is kind of my thought process or kind of views behind it.
I had never heard of the WorkLife Integration, so I like that one. One I had kind of fallen onto recently was WorkLife Flow.
Okay, yeah.
And just like you're going to have time. Football is my main sport. I am going to be pretty busy during football. Like, I get out of there as much as I can. I get home as much as I possibly can. It is not the rat race that is Division I. I've got coaches that think that way too, which is also very refreshing. But then after that, like, as much as I can, it's a shift. It's a downshift. It's a chill out, not get home after, get home at 5:30 every day. I honestly was a little worried. Sounds stupid in hindsight, working track. And then coming to this is, what am I going to do with my weekends that I don't have a track meet? It was not hard to fill.
Yes.
So
you'll find something to fill the time.
Yes, it didn't take long. Apparently that's podcasting, but that works.
I know, right? All kinds of stuff. I know about all this downtime now, and I'm just like, I'm still just keeping busy running around, like,
sure.
And I think it's good too, because then, and sorry to kind of go off of a little bit of a tangent here, but I think it's good for self-reflection. I was on AT Talks yesterday.
Yep.
With some of the athletic trainers, and that's one thing that kind of came up, was using this time to have some sort of self-reflection. I think, for me, and I didn't have a lot of that in my last year of work in college football. There wasn't really time to improve or grow or have any self-reflection or anything. And so now I've been kind of just trial and error, trying a bunch of different jobs and careers and settings, and just, I've got time to self-reflect and really figure out, understand myself a little bit better, and then grow as an individual, focus, learn things that I wanted to learn. There's always, like, use the downtime wisely. I mean, yeah, of course everyone's going to watch Netflix, and I'm a video game lover, so I'll play video games.
Fair enough.
I'll also use some of the time to, again, self-reflect and see, kind of ponder thoughts and ideas, and just try and grow.
Awesome. Anything else around burnout specifically that you want to cover?
I do want to, man, there's so much, to it. And I think another thing I guess I'd like to hit on is what to do if you're feeling burnt out.
Absolutely.
That's a question that I've got when I went through it. For me, and I'm generally a very, very, very positive person. I always have been my entire life. Positive, happy, don't know why, it's great. I'm not complaining.
Good for you. Keep it that way.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. But that year, that last year, when I got burnt out, I kind of started to see that dwindle a little bit. You know,
Yep.
my mind in my head, I was naturally, complaining more, both in my head and verbally, and just kind of started to have more of a negative mindset, and like little things started to agitate me a little. Like I was self-aware enough to realize, like, oh man, this is starting to change me a little bit, which is why I got out, and I had to kind of do a 180 and adjust. But going through it at the time was like, how do I manage this, like, while I'm in it, and everyone kind of has the things that kind of help ground them. For me, it's, was working 90 to 100 hours a week, basically 12 months a year. And, it's hard to find a way to ground yourself. There wasn't, exercise. Like I was overweight. I was, around 200 pounds before. I was working out is like meditation for some people. When you're working that much, to be honest, like, could I make time? Like, sure, I guess at like 10 p.m. to 10:45, and then try to go to bed at 11 and wake up at 5:30. But for me, it just wasn't practical. I had no energy to implement any sort of self-care tactics. So I think developing self-care tactics is important. And if you've got time to implement them, find the things that, your hobbies and things, hold on to them. And if you're in a situation like I was in, where you just you physically cannot do that, then, for me, my way of kind of grounding myself was basically just communicating with my best friends, talking to people, because I love talking to people, and in video games. And luckily, there were nights here and there where I could get on and play for a little bit with my friends, and we would talk. I would mostly vent and complain for a little bit. I would try not to, but some nights I just needed to. But that was my way of sort of trying to escape my reality, at the time, my escapism. And my escapism was food and video games. And I think finding what your if you are in burnout, obviously you want to adjust to get it fixed. If you're on your way out, then great, like, do that too. But if just to manage it while you're going through it until you figure out how to transition, definitely find your source of escapism, or your source of grounding, where you can basically just escape your work setting and get your mind taken off work. That can be cooking for some people, working out, running, meditation if people meditate, walks, long walks on your own with people. I mean, there's just lots of options. So find what works for you. There's not going to be a kind of a cookie cutter thing where everyone can follow it and be just fine. You really have to kind of find what your escapism is, and focus on that, and try to get you through that kind of transitional phase. Hopefully it's transitional. If you are burnt out, it's, fix it or get out. Like it's not a place to stay long term, and I get everyone's situations are a little bit different, with finances and money and family, and, as far as needing a job and stuff. But, there's just, figure out a way, make sure that there's some sort of kind of plan or process to eventually try and fix the issue, because you can't really sustain that for the next, 40, 50, 60 years of your life.
Yeah, I think the hitting on the part of, like, it's hard to leave a job, but it's also okay too. Like, that's that's a hard conversation, and obviously it does things to you financially, but it's the ultimate decision that you always have. If it's not going to change for you, that might be what you have to do.
Yeah, exactly. It's definitely not easy. It's it's stepping outside your comfort zone. It's whether you've been somewhere for a year or 10 years, it's never easy. But it's just recognizing the big picture, and making an adjustment for yourself in the long term. I think is huge. And I think it's hard for people to step outside the comfort zone. But I think recognizing it and being able to kind of make that decision, if that's what's best, is super important. You got to be able, at least for if you're unhappy, like for your own happiness, it's just got to be something that needs to get done.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought all that up. That's a really good point.
I appreciate it.
Now, with that,
Hmm.
anything else around burnout that you'd like to cover?
Um, let's see. We talked about a little bit of that. I mean, oh, I guess one more quick little. I guess not really quick. I say quick, but it never is. I talk a lot, as I mentioned before, but recovering from burnout. Um, I've gotten questions on how like I recovered from my burnout. And really for me, I took about 6 months off of work completely. I was in a financial situation where I could do that. I'd saved enough money, and I just I traveled and I saw people that I haven't seen in a long time. So for me, it was finding kind of reconnecting with relationships. So I think recovering from burnout is going to be different for everybody, but I think it's finding what means a lot to you. And so for me, it was just reconnecting and rekindling relationships that I've just kind of lost touch with over the years. And so I took time to travel and see people in person if I could. I took some vacation trips, and I drove all around town and met with people, lunches and dinners, and with families and friends, and that really kind of helped really kind of get me back to feeling normal again, in a sense that we're like, okay, because I had not, I had kind of cut everybody out. It was just really just focused on my work, and that was it. So I think just thinking about the recovery part is finding kind of what makes you happy, again, getting in your hobbies and the things that mean a lot to you, whether it's family, friends, knitting, painting, photography, whatever it is. Doing a little bit more of that, and then making sure that in your next job or career, whatever you're doing next, doesn't set you up or put you in a position of where you're going to end up where you were before. So for me, a lot of the different jobs and things I'm trying now, I've got a really good idea of what I want. I've got a kind of a set of ground rules that I will not budge from now on, because at this point in my career, thankfully, I've been doing this long enough now where it's easier for me to find a job. And so if I am in a situation where I'm just not happy and I can't make any adjustments, then and there's nothing that I can do to really kind of tailor it to the way that it would make me happy, then I can kind of uproot and try other positions. Not ideal, because no one wants to keep uprooting and moving around. But again, it's kind of trial and error. So I think as far as recovering from burnout, if you're going through it, I think don't be afraid of trial and error. If you've never worked in the industrial setting and you're like, I have no interest in industrial, try it. Like, what have you got to lose? Maybe you try, you end up liking it. Maybe you go into the military setting and you try it and you like it. Great, stay. If you don't like it, then figure out what you do and don't like about that, and take that with you into your next job. So it is going to be a little bit of trial and error to kind of recover from it, but at least this kind of gives you a good baseline idea of what got you there in the first place, so you have a heads up on what to avoid. So that's probably one other thing I would add in addition to the burnout stuff.
Sure. Just a follow up to that. Did you find like it was that kind of experimentation or kind of doing different things that kind of sparked you back into wanting to do kind of, I guess, traditional in quotes athletic training, or back into into this setting?
Yeah, no. So, well, for me, it was really interesting. The mental health business I did with some friends, that was something that kind of was, my friends are licensed marriage and family therapists. It was a program for suicidal youth. Total long story, but short version, I was like, yeah, let's just try stuff. Let's just try it. Why not? Like, I'm all about like happiness and, passionate about that. I want people to be happy in general. And so we tried it for a little while. Didn't work out. A lot of reasons. Totally fine. I learned a lot. At the time I was like, one of my hobbies is Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And, I got involved with some of the jiu-jitsu tournaments and doing athletic training coverage on that side, PRN, which was nice because I can kind of pick and choose which tournaments I wanted to work. And, I could very much kind of control my schedule that way. So it kind of kept my foot in the door with athletic training, and I'm still in the experimenting phase. As we stopped the mental health business, I was going to go do more contract work. And I was kind of thinking, well, like, what do I want to do next? Like, I had some friends of mine were like, come to the military setting. Some of them are industrial setting. And I was looking at those options, and it just so happens that the city that I'm in is St. George. I'm living with a friend of mine who's also an athletic trainer at the university here. I was living with him as I was starting the mental health business. Well, timing wise, as I stopped that, they had a full-time baseball AT leave. He's like, dude, would you mind, like, would you be interested? I'm like, no, like, I really don't want to go back to college. I was like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. So I was like, I'll help out PRN until you guys find somebody. That was my plan. I was going to hire and then figure out this spring, I was just going to, I don't know, figure something out job wise, athletic training wise. Not really sure if I was going to move back home to LA or stay out here in Southern Utah. I didn't know. So I did PRN stuff, and it wasn't too bad. I was working baseball. Okay. I've never played baseball. I don't follow baseball. Not a huge fan of the sport, but I was like, why not? I'm open to it. Let's just try it. I tried it. Baseball for me, it's hard to get into, coming from just mostly live action sports.
Mm-hmm.
The guys were great. The coaching staff was great. The staff's been really good to me, and the hours were super manageable. And the workload was, again, it's, we're efficient. We're not like just pulling our thumb, wasting time. And I was like, okay, you know what? They weren't able to find anybody. And I was like, okay, sure. Why not? Let's try it. Let's do it full time until I can figure out what my next step is going to be. And I'm not really sure how long I'll do this. They're asking me the other day if I plan on staying here next year. I have no idea. So I'm actually in that experimental phase.
Okay.
I don't think it's this setting, but right now I'm in a good place. I don't mind it. It's good work. The guys are great. Again, it's fun. I'm not burnt out at all, but I can tell that there's just more things I want to do. And so, for me, I'm still experimenting. Like I said, one thing is, and sorry, I'm not trying to like plug my podcast on here, but I started a podcast because I just have this, it's just my name, Eli Kassab, on any of the platforms if you guys want to listen. But anyway, that's not what we're here for. But I had people plant the idea in my head because I talked to other athletic trainers, and I talked to people about life, athletic training. And so I was like, okay, why not? I just said yes. I was like, okay, Google how to start a podcast. And then I just tried it. I'm just trying stuff. I'm like, okay, I'll do that for now until it's, I don't know, becomes not fun. And then I'll stop doing it. Just trying it. And then another passion of mine is I love all things finance related. I'm a big, finance investing guy. I love all things stock market, kind of real estate related. And I help a lot of friends and family out with personal finance, money management type stuff, investing stuff. I just kind of keep to myself because I don't want to lose other people's money.
Yeah.
And it's way out of my scope of practice. I don't have a
right now would be a real interesting time.
Oh, right now, side note. Everything's on sale and I love it. Anyway, I'm buying a lot of stuff in the stock market right now, but but that essentially what I'm trying to get at is that got me thinking about, some people are like, well, why don't you kind of combine that? Maybe look at the real estate field. There's real estate investing, there's real estate flipping, and I don't have an interest in flipping, but maybe the investing side of things. So I've been spending time kind of researching more on that end, and trying to see if that's something I would potentially be interested in doing. I have no idea. So yeah, I'm just doing a lot of things right now. Again, just saying yes to kind of whatever, and just trying stuff and kind of seeing what I like and don't like. And kind of see where athletic training lines up. I'm not sure if it's going to be athletic training or not. If it is, great. If not, no worries. I'm just trying to find my place in this world and kind of see where I end up and what ultimately makes me happy and what I see myself doing for the next, 50 years or so, or however long I'm going to live.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Shall we go on to the AT chat questions?
Let's do it.
All right.
Awesome. What you got?
I mean, even if you're not in the profession in the next 5 to 10 years, just based on all that, where do you see the profession going in the next 5 to 10 years?
I do see the profession growing in the next, 5 to 10 years. I think a lot of teams on a lot of different levels are adding staff, and I think we're slowly starting to, it's a slow process, but getting organizations to recognize our value. Pay scales are going up slowly. It needs to get up higher, but it's getting there. So I think it's heading in a good direction, in a sense where we're starting to become a little bit more known, and positions are starting to teams are starting to grow, programs are starting to get built, and a lot of high schools, colleges, and different divisions, 1, 2, 3, are all starting to add staff. I know that Dixie State over here is adding 1 or 2 full-time staff members next year.
Nice.
And I know that they're adding like intern positions and stuff. So there's definitely, I think there's gonna be a lot more opportunities for athletic training. And a lot of non-traditional settings I think are getting really popular. So I think you're going to see a lot of athletic trainers become a little bit more common in the non-traditional settings, like industrial, military, or even the police, police or firefighter environment,
absolutely.
like on the EMS side of things. So I think you're going to see more non-traditional and more growth as far as, how do people view us in athletic training, and just trying to educate people on what we do. And yeah, so.
What advice would you give yourself if you could go back when you were a younger athletic trainer?
Advice that I would give, the one piece of advice I would give is learn to set boundaries, and it's okay to say no. Were some of the things, because early on, I'm sure everybody, like I was just, just yes to everything, like yes, and then you don't realize the, Pandora's box kind of opens, and you're like, oh, okay, I know that now.
Right.
I couldn't foresee that happening before. So I think for my younger self, it is learning to kind of set boundaries and learning to say no are a couple of pieces of advice that I would give. And it's okay to not know everything.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I was so nervous about being like, I don't know, or I'm not sure. Like I felt like I had to know everything. That's something I would tell myself, like it's okay. Really, it's fine. Just say you don't know, learn, move on, and kind of go from there. Not the end of the world.
I like it. What has been one of the most influential resources that you have found so far in your career?
The people around me. I really have been so fortunate to have just developed so many good relationships with so many good people over the course of my life, and having people to rely on when I'm just in a bind or stuck in a situation I'm not really sure what to do. For example, baseball is a new sport for me. I reaching out to athletic trainers that have baseball experience to kind of help me with some certain things, baseball specific stuff was huge. So I really think the most influential resources I have, for me, is just the people around me. I've just, again, like I said, I've just been super fortunate to have amazing people in my life. And I value relationships more than anything, just because I just think that that's just kind of priceless and, invaluable.
Agreed. If you could change or eliminate one thing, could be a modality, a common practice, a mindset in the field of athletic training, what would it be?
I've got lots, but let me just pick one.
If you want to throw a second one in there, we're not opposed.
We're not okay. All right. Well, the first one, I will say this is learn to not take things personally. I think this is a mindset piece for athletic training. I've seen a lot with full-time staff, interns, students, graduate assistants. There are a lot of situations where I see people take things very, very, very personally, and it ends up creating a hostile situation. Not always hostile, but it just creates a negative environment or a negative situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the biggest mindsets people can obtain in athletic training, or try to work on, is trying to separate, your, personal, kind of emotional side of things from like the logical and practical side of things. I think learning to, work together, and kind of decide, like, okay, like let's say you're presented with a problem and then a solution, making sure that the problem and the solution are both thought about, practically. What makes the most sense from an efficiency standpoint, from a program standpoint, like what's best for the situation at hand. versus, and then not taking things personally if there are suggestions back and forth, or if your idea doesn't get picked. It's okay. It's nothing personal. It's just like, let's just figure out kind of what's best for the program. And I think
Sure.
a lot of people really kind of focus on, themselves, and on their, I guess, not focus on their own feelings. Like, so if somebody were to offend them, and well, now that changes their decision and what their recommendations are. So now, if, as a staff, you're meeting and you're like, hey, I've got option A and B. Well, like, are you going to pick option A because it's what makes the most sense? Or are you picking option B because you're trying to, spite the other person because they offended you one time doing something, you know what I mean?
Yep.
So I think trying to separate the two. And I think the other piece is just, for more, I guess, more on the clinical side of things, is just learning to get the athletes off the table. All the feel good stuff.
I like that.
See a lot of that. I think that's,
Yep.
like, you got to get moving. You got to get off the table. Like, you got to do mobility. You got to get work in. All the modality. There are a lot of modalities out there. There are just so many, and they all have their place as a supplement. But ultimately, I think it's really important for people to kind of focus on just kind of getting the athletes kind of off the table when they're ready, and getting them kind of moving and being more kind of active in their treatment rehab program.
I can appreciate that one and agree completely.
I appreciate it.
Last one is, what does being an athletic trainer mean to you?
I think athletic trainer, I think it means to me is being a healthcare provider, being a professional, and being a human being. I think it's trying to balance the little bit of everything, because it is a very unique profession. We're very involved on the athletes, or the patients. I'll just say the patients, because depending on your work setting. But you do develop very close and interesting relationships with people, and learning to balance, you being a professional healthcare provider versus, being a human being. You're going to see people on their best days. You're going to see people on their worst days. People are going to come in and they're going to just, life just kind of hits them in the face one day, and then you're just happen to be the shoulder to cry on that day. So I think people, you're learning that, while you do have to be professional and maintain that professional relationship, I think at the same time, it's important to maintain, being a human being and being empathetic to people, and kind of listening, when you need to. And I think, in athletic training for us, I think we're really just, kind of just caring people in general, and we're ultimately out there to look out for others, and to take care of others in lots of different ways. It's not, just physical injury, but it's very much mental health component to it as well. So that's what I think it's kind of just kind of, being a nurturer and a provider.
Well said. I like it. In closing, if people wanted to get in touch with you, what would be the best way? Obviously your podcast, let's put that out there. Absolutely.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you. The podcast, or on any social media platform, I'm really literally everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, my podcast. What else? I started a TikTok, but I'm not really active in it. I need to be, though. It looks pretty entertaining.
Yeah.
But yeah, if anybody wants to contact me, please don't hesitate. Reach out. I'm an open book. I've reached out to a lot of people through Twitter, Instagram, DMs and stuff, messages, LinkedIn messages. I penned out my cell phone number. Like, it's just like, it's nobody's business. Call. I've talked to people over the phone and FaceTimed, and so really just, anything I can do to help, and hopefully help people kind of navigate, kind of wherever part they're at in their lives is huge. I really do enjoy it, and would love to help out if anybody, has any questions or needs anything. So
awesome. Well, we thank you for taking the time, and really appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you, man. Thanks for, reaching out and, getting me on your show. It's a little bit different, it's nice kind of being on the other end. So I do appreciate you. Let me come on your podcast, and
absolutely,
hopefully people get some value out of it. And, hopefully we'll touch base again soon on different topics.